Hello and welcome to the Topher Project. I'm Topher Field and I help busy people like yourself to keep up with the world as it changes around us. We have an election on our hands, as I'm sure you're well aware. And as is with every election, they say this is the most important election of our lifetimes. Well, seems like every single election fits that description, but it does feel like this one might have some pretty serious implications because our current Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, is being described by some people as a communist. Now, some people throw that away as a throwaway line, as a simple, easy insult and pejorative, but there are some people willing to put their face and name to that as a serious accusation. One such person is author Trevor Loudon, and he joins me now. Trevor, welcome to the Topher Project.
Thank you very much, Topher. Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure.
I appreciate you making the time. Now, I'm just going to bring up the cover of your book here, Comrade Prime Minister. That is a pretty serious accusation just there in the title. It's Anthony Albanese's 40-year alliance with Australian communism. I imagine your lawyer would have had a heart attack when they saw that, with all of the lawsuits that could potentially come out of such an accusation. What gives you the confidence to be willing to say that Anthony Albanese, current Australian Prime Minister, is a comrade, is allied with communism?
Well, because it's the truth, and it's a book of 398 pages, 50 of which are references, lots and lots of communist documents, lots of screenshots, lots of, it's very well referenced, but it's not a boring book. It's a very fast-paced book. Look, Albanese started with the communists, and we know some of this in the early 80s when he was at Sydney University. He was involved with the Communist Party. Well, they dissolved in 1990 and they set up a group called the Search Foundation, funded by $3 million worth of communist money. And that infiltrated the ACTU, took over the ACTU under Sally McManus. Sally can sue me too, but I can prove that. They took over the left wing of the ALP, which is now the dominant wing of the ALP. And Albanese didn't come from the left. He came from the hard left of the left. And it took over the Australian Greens as well. So these three centres of power have nurtured Albanese's career every single step of the way. And they got him into the leadership of the Labor Party. They took over the hard left, took over the executive of the Labor Party in 2019. And they prepared this beautifully for Albanese to deliver the coup de grace on Australia, to really bring hardcore socialism to this country. And the first term Albanese was the moderate term. Second term, all bets are off. It's going to be way, way more radical than the first term, if he gets it.
We know that the Labor Party has often been led by people that have a history in hardcore socialism and communism. I would argue that former Prime Minister Julia Gillard fit that bill as well, with who she used to write for when she was in university. But there's a difference between your let's say your high school years and your university years, and once you're actually a 50-odd-year-old experienced politician. Some people would argue that maybe that's his past, but surely that's not his present. You can't call him a communist now. What is it that you've seen? Give me some receipts here.
Well, there's several, but one I'll tell you for a start. The Search Foundation is probably 600 members, around the country. It's not a big organization. Now, the Australian released a list, the Australian newspaper released a list of the most powerful non-elected influencers in Australia a couple of years ago. Number 2 was Tim Gartrell, Anthony Albanese's Chief of Staff. His deputy, basically his go-to man. Gartrell joined the Search Foundation in 2013. He is a full-on Marxist socialist, former General Secretary of the Labor Party, ran the gay marriage operation, was very involved in the Voice referendum, etc. There's an example right there. Linda Burney, his Aboriginal Affairs Minister, deep connections to the Communist Party going back years. Current, very recent connections to the Search Foundation. Sally McManus, another one of his great friends. Mark Butler, his environmental secretary, also deeply involved with the Search Foundation, and especially Penny Wong, who is really the effective Deputy Prime Minister of Australia. And she is 100% cut from the same cloth. Communist affiliations going back to her college days, Search Foundation affiliations going right up till now. And you'll see and her orientation towards China, where this is leading the country.
Please pardon the interruption of my interview with Trevor Loudon. I hope you're enjoying it, but I do have to say I am 100% viewer supported. So if you like my independent work reporting on things that a lot of other media simply won't touch, then you need to get a hold of some of my best-selling books or my multi-award-winning DVD or my awesome merch, or even check out my Getting Your Head in the Game masterclass to help you think about the challenges that you face and to make better decisions going forward. And all of those are available at goodpeoplebreakbadlaws.com. By supporting me in that way, you're going to help me to continue producing videos and interviews like this one with Trevor. Let's get back to the interview. So you mentioned a moment ago that what we've seen from Albanese, first-term Albanese, is sort of the nice version, and if he were to be re-elected, the gloves would come off. What do you envisage? What do you think he would actually try and get done should he be re-elected?
One of the things he did recently was ASIO, your security intelligence services, used to have a guaranteed place in cabinet. Well, they don't now. They've been kicked out of cabinet because they know who he is, and he doesn't want them in cabinet while he implements what he has to do. And the guy he got to, Glyn Davis, as head of his Prime Minister's department, was the guy who pushed our ASIO out. Now, Glyn Davis is deep connections to the Search Foundation, deep connections to the Confucius Institutes that are pro-Chinese operations in your colleges. But what you're going to see is a big increase in immigration from overseas because they want to dilute the current voting base, give many more Labour voters as they possibly can. You're going to see the voice referendum come back, pushed with government money, probably done at local and state level, because that was 100% Search Foundation project. Thomas Mayo, the voice of the voice, is a Search Foundation comrade, mentored by the famous Darwin communist Brian Manning, who was also in the Search Foundation. You're going to see you're going to see the Green New Deal, which comes out of the communist movement of the United States. Massive increase in environmental regulations, shutting down mining, shutting down energy extraction. You're going to see a transition to an impoverished green economy, and you're going to see massively increased indoctrination of your kids, but you're also going to see a big move towards China. Albanese's worked with pro-Chinese communists his whole entire life. That's where Penny Wong comes from. Her orientation is pro-Chinese communist. They hate the fact that America has got power in the Pacific. They look at the fact that the Chinese are firing guns off your coasts and doing deals with the Cook Islands and getting into East Timor, getting into a Papua New Guinea, getting into your businesses. That's fine by them because they believe in the Chinese system. They are on that team. So you're going to see Australia so sucked into the communist Chinese vortex, it may never recover. It may never claw its way back out again.
Okay, but hold on for a second, because there are people who will say that this is just another round of Reds under the bed type scare. We saw the Victorian Premier, Daniel Andrews, trying to sign up to the Belt and Road Initiative, and the federal government shut that down pretty quickly. In this election cycle, we've seen both the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, and the opposition leader, Peter Dutton, claim that if elected, they will take the Port of Darwin back into Australian hands and essentially rescind the lease to the Chinese company. Isn't this just sort of, the 1980s called and they asked for their politics back? Is this really happening now?
Well, look, the Chinese are arrogant enough to fire guns off your coast. They're arrogant enough to fire their sonar radars at your frogmen in the Philippines and burst their eardrums and things like this. They will do that kind of thing. Look, the Chinese are on the march through the Pacific. There's going to be a confrontation in the Pacific, right? America needs Australia for that. You've got Pine Gap. You've got a lot of military connections, Five Eyes, all that kind of thing. The Chinese desperately want to take Australia into their orbit because that will neutralize the whole Southwest Pacific, keep America out of it. They will get influence. That's going to affect the Philippines, Taiwan. It's going to affect Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, all of the Pacific Islands, and New Zealand. It's going to affect everybody. This is the Chinese are attempting to shift the balance of power in the Southwestern Pacific. So they've put a lot of effort into infiltrating your ALP and your coalition to some degree, moving lots and lots of immigrants to the country, who, like in Canada, there's been several scandals about Chinese nationals voting illegally in Canadian elections, Chinese students being forced to vote in Canadian elections too.
Wow.
This will all happen in Australia as well. So, and I don't think this is, I think most Australians are a little bit concerned about China. Well, I'll tell you what, if you're concerned now, you wait till Albanese's had another couple of years and Penny Wong is basically welcoming them in, because both of those people come from pro-Chinese communism. That's what they believe in.
So, Trevor, why you? How did this become your topic? I detect from your accent that you're probably from just across the pond from Australia. Our friends in New Zealand. You are an international man as well, though. You travel a lot more than just that. Why you? How did you end up in a position where you even had the research and the capacity to write and to uncover these truths, and then to write a book like this?
Look, I started researching communism in New Zealand back in the 80s. For the last 15 years, I've been based mainly in the United States. I've written books on Kamala Harris, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, all that kind of thing. But about 15 years ago, I really started looking at the Search Foundation, because that's the main bedrock of Australian communism now. And when those articles came out about a couple of years ago, before the last election, about Albanese's flirtation with the Communist Party back in the 80s, and I thought I'd better look into this. So I commissioned research at ANU and other universities. I got people to dig up documents for me. I poured through the Search Foundation website, Wayback Machine, did some interviews. I spent a whole year basically researching it, putting the book together. And because I understood, I'm from New Zealand. New Zealand's not going to prosper if Australia goes socialist. New Zealand, quarter of our population live in Australia. So it's in my interest, it's in America's interest, and especially it's in Australia's interest that Australia remains a free and democratic country. And you saw, as you mentioned Daniel Andrews before, you saw what it was like when the Chinese gave you COVID. Here's my thesis too. The Chinese gave you COVID, but then they managed the response. Daniel Andrews is completely in China's pocket. The unions in Victoria are led largely by the Search Foundation and the Communist Party of Australia, Marxist-Leninist, which is a pro-Chinese outfit. Wow. Wherever the lockdowns were worst, that's where the Chinese had the most influence, because the Chinese used the COVID response to damage our economies to the maximum degree possible. And just by the way, Anthony Albanese wrote a book on COVID. There's about 10 contributors. He wrote a whole chapter. He launched it in 2022 about how to use COVID to bring socialism to Australia. And I
was not aware of that.
Yeah, well, about 4 of those contributors in that book were also Search Foundation members. So this is a couple of years ago. He is writing a book with Search Foundation Marxists on how to use the COVID epidemic to advance socialism in Australia. I've got a chapter in my book about this. So you can, if I name the book, I've got a picture of him launching it. I name all the people who contribute. I quote some of what he said. It is 100%. The Search Foundation was heavily involved in exploiting the COVID for their purposes. And Sally McManus controls the unions, you see. So the unions enforce the lockdowns. Yeah. And then the Chinese exerted their influence on the politicians they control. And between those two, you got some pretty heavy lockdowns in Australia.
Well, Trevor, I get the feeling we could talk for a very long time, but unfortunately we can't. For those that do want to read your book, that do want to find out what book that was that Anthony Albanese contributed to and get a hold of your work, that is only a week to the election, but I believe people can get a hold of the hardcover books, or the hard copy books, very quickly, and it's also available on Kindle. But can you tell people where to find it?
just go to Amazon.com. It's not in bookshops or anything like that. It's called Comrade Prime Minister Anthony Albanese's 40-year alliance with Australian communism. And that's current. That's right up till a few months ago. So just go to Amazon, get a hard copy. You'll get it in a couple of days. Or if you really, really can't wait, go and get one on Kindle. And you can also get audio book as well, I believe. But that's a bit of a mission, that is.
Yeah. Well, Trevor, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the effort that you put into writing the book. I will get a copy and I will read it myself. Full disclosure, I haven't read it yet. As soon as I heard about it, I wanted to get Trevor on to tell all of you, my audience, about it as well. So, Trevor, thank you for taking the time out. Thank you for writing the book. And let's hope that we don't see a rise in communism here in Australia following this coming election. Trevor, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Topher.
Well, thank you for watching my interview with Trevor Loudon, the author of Comrade Prime Minister. Of course, there is an election coming, so I'm going to have to put an authorization statement up at the end of this video, so brace yourself. Thank you for watching to the end. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment, and check out this recommended video by YouTube as well. And here is the authorization coming at you right now. Authorized by Topher Field for Topher Field at Topher Field Studio.